Hello everyone, this is Asha Best. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are safe. My dear students, today I welcome you all in class 6 history. We are going to discuss a new lesson today, vital villages and thriving towns. In this chapter, we'll understand about the iron tools and agriculture. We'll also discuss about the steps to increase production, especially irrigation system, how it helps in increasing the production. We'll also discuss that the type of people, those who used to live in villages. We'll also find out about the stories about the travelers as well as about the craft persons of that point of time. So let us begin. Iron tools and agriculture. Iron came into use around 3000 years ago, about 2500 years ago. The use of iron tools increased. These included access for clearing forest and expanding land and iron plowshare in increasing production. So rise of the new kingdom and towns led to an increase in agriculture and trade. It resulted in the growth of the new towns. Rapid increase in agricultural production that point of time, it happened due to the iron tools which were used in agriculture. So the discovery of iron tools led to the rapid rise in agricultural production. It made it easier to bring more land under cultivation by clearing forest, as the iron plowshare were used that point of time, and which made the cultivation more easier. The use of iron plowshare made it possible to dig deep in those areas where the soil was fertile. It led to significant rise in agricultural production, first in North India and then in South India. Moving forward, the landowners and laborers. In the south, large landowners were known as Velar, plowmen, Ezava, landless laborers, and slaves like Kadisiar and Adime were amongst the main community members in the northern parts. The village headman was hereditary, who was the biggest landowner and used to collect tax from kings. That point of time, there were at least three different kinds of people used to live in most of the villages. The people, those who were large landowners, those who were owning more land. There were people, those who were not having their own lands. They were the landless laborers, and they used to work in the lands of large land owners. There were Gram Bhojaka also that point of time in the countryside, northern part of the country, in the village areas. The village headman was also known as Gram Bhojaka, and Gram Bhojaka basically the Gram Bhojaka used to be from the same family, and they used to held the position by birth or generation wise. They used to continue as Gram Bhojaka. In the other words, we can say that their position was hereditary that point of time. Gram Bhojaka used to have most of the land in a village generally, and they had slaves. The landless laborers used to work for cultivation in their land areas, and beside it, the Gram Bhojaka used to be very powerful. They used to work for the kings. They used to collect tax for kings from other villages. Now, the functions, he also functioned as a judge in the village, and sometimes he used to work as policeman also. Apart from Gram Bhojaka, there were other people, independent people also. They were farmers, they were landowners, and they were men and women, as like they have dasas, and you can say kamkaras were also known like that. And they were not having, the women especially as well as the kamkaras, they were not having their own lands, and they used to earn their living while working in the fields of large land owners. Sangam literature was composed 2300 years ago. It was called as Sango because it was written and compiled in assemblies known as Sangams of poets, which were held in the city of Madurai. Now, the earliest Tamil composition we are talking about here, These texts were called sangams as they were composed in the assemblies where the literate people used to assemble, they used to discuss, they used to exchange ideas, and they used to compose these literature. Like the Tamil terms mentioned above are found in Sangam literature. Jatakas were stories composed by ordinary people that point of time, but written and preserved by Buddhist monks. Other kinds of evidences to find out about life in some of the early cities are sculptures, carved scenes depicting people's life. So these were the finding out about cities like stories, travelers, sculptures, and archaeology. You must have heard about Jatakas. These were the stories, these were probably composed by the common people, and later on, these were written down by the Buddhist monks. And there are many stories you must have heard about these stories in your in different books. So these stories usually they used to depict the life of common people. Now, cities and travel accounts. Another way of finding out about early cities in form of accounts of sailors and travelers who visited these cities and kingdoms. Like I said that we used to collect information, we used to have more knowledge about that point of time, about the metal they used, about the people they used to live in villages, about the literature found at that point of time. But apart from that, people used to identify more about their past by just the travelers, those who created different literature, though the sailors though and the travelers who visited these cities and kingdoms. Moving forward, let us talk about the coins. Now, punch marked coins, which were in use for about 500 years ago, were called so because the design were punched on the metal, silver, or copper. I think you must have seen your textbook also. There were punch marked coins, pictures of punch marked coins were given. That point of time, you must have noticed nowadays that wealth is measured in terms of coins. And when you see the stories given in your chapter, you will understand that point of time that how important the coins were. There were many places from where archaeologists have found several thousands of coins of that period. The earliest coins which were used about 500 years ago, they were used, they were made as punch marked coins. And they have been given this name because the designs were punched on the metal, like silver or copper. Some kind of design used to be punched on these, the metal maybe of round, square, or rectangular shape. That is why they were known as punch marked coins. Now, cities and its functions. Mathura was important because it was located on the crossroad of two major routes of travel and trade, from the northwest to the east and from the north to south. Mathura was also a production center of fine sculptures that point of time. When we talk about Mathura, it was an important settlement for more than 2500 years. And it was important because the location of Mathura has made it so important because it was important for travel and trade, and people used to come from northwest as well as from the east and from north to south to for trading purposes. They also made a fortification that point of time around the city, and there were several shrines also available. There were farmers and herders in these areas. They provided food to people living in different cities of Mathura. Mathura was extremely fine, known as fine sculpture production. And Mathura became the second capital of Kushanas that point of time around 2000 years ago. And There were Buddhist monasteries, Jaina shrines, and it was an important center for the worship of Krishna. It is a religious place, if you know about it. There were several inscriptions on the surfaces, like these inscriptions were made on stone slabs, and there were statues also, which were found by archaeologists in Mathura. Now, let us talk about crafts and craft persons of that point of time. Crafts and craft persons. Extremely fine potteries known as the northern black polished ware were produced there. Were famous centers such as Varanasi in the north and Madurai in the south. Art and craft flourished in every village that point of time. Each village they had weavers, they had dyers, potters, blacksmiths, basket weavers, and goldsmith, carpenters, and there were other skilled craft persons also. Silk weaving, dyeing, coin minting, ivory carving, cloth making, and bead making. These were very famous or popular occupation during that time. Archaeological sources show extremely fine pottery also that point of time, that was known as the northern black polished ware. And most of the craftsmen they organized themselves into organizations which were called shrines. Now let us talk about Arikamedu. Between 2200 and 1900 years ago, Arikamedu was a coastal settlement where ships unloaded goods from distant lands. A massive brick structure, which may have been a warehouse, was found at the site. Most people that point of time they lived in villages and they were farmers, and towns were basically found near the coastal region, and they used to trade with Rome and China that point of time. They were administration held by the king. There were even a general assembly which was known as Sabha that point of time. And when we talk about Arikamedu, if we go more deep into that, Arikamedu, it was a settlement in the coastal region where ships used to used for inland, you can say, trade through the sea areas. There were massive structure of bricks, which may have been a warehouse where people used to work for several hours to create their craft, to create the pottery. And these were the areas. This was made by pressing wet clay into a stamped mold. They were stamped red glazed pottery also, and they were made pressing wet clay into a stamped mold. There was yet another kind of pottery which was made locally, though Roman designs were used at point of time. Roman lamps, glassware, and gems have also been found at this site. We are talking about Arikamedu here. There were people used to create small tanks also that point of time, and basically archaeologists have came to a conclusion that they must have used those tanks for dyeing purposes. They used to dye wets, they used to dye clothes, sorry, these dyeing wets were used to dye clothes. There is plenty of evidences for the making of beads from semi precious stones and glass. They used to make all these items using beads and semi precious stones, as well as they used glass to create such items. So finally we can say that Arikamedu was very important, you can say, trading center and a port and a center for export and import. Arikamedu we are talking about, and traders from Rome came here in Arikamedu for trading purposes. So this is all for the day. This is all from this chapter. I hope you understood. I request you all to read the text given in your notebooks, your books thoroughly for better understanding. Keep watching my videos, and we'll meet soon with some more interesting chapters, videos from your history book. So take care and goodbye everyone.